Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim, page 75, A, top of the page, with the words Esve Abaya. Esve Abaye, Kol ben Yachid, Shinisari Bekol ben Yachid, Bekol ben Tzibur, Shinisari Bekol ben Tzibur, Bekol ben Yachid, Bekol ben Tzibur, Shinisari Bezeh Bozeh. Noisin arba matonois mikol echad echad, v'im nosan maton mikol echad yatsa, v'im nosan arba mikol yatsa. Abaye raised an objection to this from a Braita in Tosefta 8:22. With regard to the offering of an individual that was intermingled with another offering of an individual, and likewise a communal offering that was intermingled with another communal offering, or the offering of an individual and the communal offering that were intermingled with each other, the priest places 4 placements of blood from each and every one of them on the altar, and in this manner fulfills the obligation of the blood rights of all the offerings. But if he placed 1 placement from each one, he has fulfilled his obligation. And likewise, if he placed 4 placements from all of them together, he has fulfilled his obligation. The Braita continues. In what case is this statement that he places from the blood of each of the offerings ab initio said? In a case where the offerings were intermingled when they were still alive, before they were sacrificed, and therefore the priest could perform 4 placements from the blood of each animal separately. But if slaughtered animals were then intermingled, meaning their blood became mixed together in one container, the priest places 4 placements from all of them together, only 1 set of 4. Ve'im nasan matana achas mikulan yatsa, Rabbi Omer, and in any case, if he placed 1 placement from all of them, he has fulfilled his obligation, as the blood of all these offerings is placed on the outer altar. And with regard to all of them, one fulfills the obligation after the fact with a single placement. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says one assesses the blood of the placement given from each animal. If there is enough in that blood for a placement of blood for this offering and enough for that one, it is fit, but if not, the offering is disqualified. Katani Yachid Dumyanitzibo Masibu Gavri Av Yachid Gavri. The Gemara explains the difficulty. This Braita indicates that if live offerings became intermingled, each is sacrificed for its owner, despite the fact that these offerings are owned by men and therefore require placing of the hands. It is evident that the Braita is referring to offerings of men, as it teaches the case of the offering of an individual adjacent to and therefore similar to the case of communal offering. Just as a communal offering is sacrificed by men, so too the offering of an individual that is being discussed here also belongs to men. This presents a difficulty to the explanation of Rav Yosef. Amar Rava v'tizbara mitarzahi diktani pamedivai mamorim shinishavu chayin avol shinishavu shkutin la mali chayin mali shkutin. Rava says, and can you understand the Braita in this manner? Is this Braita accurate as it stands? There is another difficulty with the Braita as it teaches. In what case is this statement said? It is said in a case where these offerings were intermingled when they were still alive. But if slaughtered animals were intermingled, it is not said. This is problematic. As what difference is it to me whether the animals are alive or whether they are slaughtered? This is not the decisive factor, as even if the animals were slaughtered If the blood of each is in a separate vessel, the priest should perform separate placements from the blood of each. Elahachi kamar hamed v'amurim shinisahu shchutim kein chayim b'chosos. Rava continues, rather, this is what the Braita is saying. In what case is this statement said? It is said in a case where these offerings were intermingled after they were slaughtered, but they were similar to living animals, meaning the blood of each animal was in separate cups. But in a situation where the blood of these animals was mixed together in a single cup, the priest places 4 placements of blood from all of them. And if he placed one placement from all of them, he has to fulfill his obligation. If so, this Braita has no bearing on the issue of offerings that became intermingled while they were still alive, as it deals exclusively with the blood of animals that have been slaughtered. Rabbi Omer, ro'in es hamatana im yesh ba. כדי לזה וכדי לזה כשרה ואם לא פסולה ומי איסלי לרבי היי סברה יהותניה אמר רבי לדברי רבי אלiezer. The Braita cited teaches that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says one assesses the blood of the placement given from each animal. If there is enough in that blood for a placement of blood for this offering, and enough for that offering is fit, but if not, the offerings are disqualified. The Gemara asks, and does Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi hold in accordance with this line of reasoning, that there must be a minimum amount of blood placed from each offering? But isn't it taught in Braita and Tosefta, Parah 9.5, with regard to the water purification into which water that is invalid for sprinkling fell, that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, according to the statement of Rabbi Eliezer. And now we turn to page 75b, Daf Ayin Hey Amud Beis. Hazah kol shehi metaeres, hazah ena tzarich shiur. Hazah mechze kasher mechze pasul, a sprinkling of any amount of the water purification on someone rendered impure by impurity imparted by a corpse purifies him from his ritual impurity, as sprinkling does not require a minimum measure to purify him. Likewise, a sprinkling of water that is half fit and half unfit for sprinkling serves to purify the individual. Evidently, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi maintains that no minimum amount is required for the sprinkling of the water of purification, and the same should apply to the sprinkling of blood on the altar. The Gemara answers that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi stated his opinion in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Eliezer, but he himself does not agree with this opinion. And if you wish, say instead that sprinkling of water of purification is discreet and placement of blood on the altar is discreet, meaning there are 2 separate halachot that have no bearing on each other. Nis'al v'bichol v'ma'aseh kule amar Rabbi Bar Chama b'chol beis Shammai ein machilin lenidois temura mahu. The Mishnah teaches, in a case where sacrificial animals were intermingled with a firstborn offering or with an animal tithe offering, they shall graze until they become unfit for sacrifice, and they shall both be eaten as a firstborn offering or as an animal tithe offering. This means that one may not sell them in the marketplace, nor sell their meat by weight, so as not to degrade consecrated animals. Rabbi Bar Chama says, with regard to a firstborn offering, according to the opinion of Beit Shammai, who holds in Bechorot 33a, that even after a firstborn offering develops a blemish, the priest may not eat it in a state of ritual impurity, and therefore one may not feed it to menstruating women. What is the halacha with regard to its substitute? That is, if the owner of a firstborn animal stated with regard to a non-sacred animal in his possession, this animal is a substitute for the firstborn offering, is a menstruating woman permitted to eat that substitute after it develops a blemish? B'chol nishgal b'litra Tumuraso ma'hu Omarove Tanya Bechor Uma'asel Keshehumemu Oisin Temura Utumurasan Kayotze Bahen. Rami Rahama further asks, a firstborn offering itself may not be redeemed, even after it develops a blemish, but what is the halacha with regard to redeeming its substitute? He likewise inquired, the firstborn offering itself, even after it develops a blemish, may not be weighed and sold by the litra in the manner of that non-sacred meat is sold. What is the halacha of its substitute in this regard? Rava says that an answer to these questions is taught in Braita. With regard to a firstborn offering or an animal tithe offering, from when they develop a blemish, they can be used to render another animal a substitute, and their substitute has the same status as them. Their substitutes have the same halachot as they do. Bechol bedek habayis mahu sheyishkol belitra Ravcha de hekdesh adif o dilma ziluta de bechol adif. Rami Bar Chama raises a dilemma. If the priest who received the firstborn offering dedicated the firstborn offering to the temple maintenance, meaning he vowed to give the value of the firstborn offering to the temple, what is the halacha with regard to the matter that he may weigh its meat by the litra? The Gemara explains the dilemma. In this case, is consideration of the profit of the temple treasury preferable, or perhaps avoidance of the demeaning of the firstborn offering is preferable? If the profit of the temple treasury is preferable, the firstborn offering should be weighed in the normal manner so as to increase its price. A buyer will pay more for meat he is able to resell afterwards by exact weight. If avoidance of demeaning the firstborn offering is preferable, it should not be weighed by the litra, even though a loss to the temple would result. Amar Rav Yossi bar Zvida, Amar Rav Yossi bar Zvida tashima shiz'aru b'chol ומעשר יראו עד שיסתברו ויחלו כבכור וכמעשר לאו לממרה דאין נשקל בליטרה. Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida says, come and hear a proof from the ruling of the Mishnah. In a case where sacrificial animals were intermingled with the firstborn offering or with an animal tithe offering, they shall graze until they become unfit for sacrifice, and they shall both be eaten as a firstborn offering or as an animal tithe offering. Is this not meaning to say that the sacrificial animal that became intermingled with the firstborn offering is also not weighed by the litra, despite the fact that this causes a slight loss to the temple? Rav Huna v'Rav Chizkiya Talmidei Rabbi Yirmiyah Amri Midami Hasam Shtei Kedushes Shtei Gufin Hacha Shtei Kedushes B'Gufecha. Rav Huna and Rav Chizkiya, the students of Rabbi Yirmiyah, say, are these cases comparable? There, the Mishnah is referring to two separate sanctities, the sanctity of a firstborn offering and that of another offering, and two separate bodies, meaning two different animals, and in such a case, one may not degrade the sanctity of the firstborn due to the other animal with which it is intermingled. Conversely, here, with regard to one who vows to give the value of a firstborn to the temple, there are two sanctities, a firstborn offering and the temple maintenance, but they are both found in one body. In this case, as the sanctity of the temple maintenance itself is in the firstborn offering, it may be weighed by the litra because of the profit the temple will gain. Maskif Rav Yossi bar Avin Ma'ilu Omal Heftu Li Bechol Shitpisu Lebedek Bayis Kulam Shomi Lo Heftu Rahman Amal Lo Tivdeh. If Yossi bar Avin objects to this, what would be the halacha if one says, redeem for me meaning, I wish to redeem a firstborn offering that he had previously dedicated as the object of his vow to the temple maintenance. Does the court listen to him? His request is certainly not granted, as by Torah law, a firstborn offering may not be redeemed. Similarly, the fact that he dedicated the value of the firstborn offering to the temple should not negate the prohibition of weighing it by the litra. The Gemara questions this comparison. One cannot raise a difficulty from a case where someone says, redeem the firstborn offering for me, as the merciful one states with regard to a firstborn offering. But the firstborn of a bull, or the firstborn of a sheep, or the firstborn of a goat, you shall not redeem. They are sacred. Numbers 18:17. But the weighing of the offering by the litra is not prohibited by Torah law. Ela amar ami klum hiknazeh ela ma shekano or kanui lo. Rather, the Gemara suggests a different resolution of Rami Bar Chama's dilemma. Rabbi Ami says, can this priest transfer to the temple maintenance anything other than that which was transferred to him? In other words, just as the priest who took the vow may not weigh the firstborn by the litra and gain a profit, the same applies to the temple treasury, the recipient of his vow. Hakol yechoilin lisarev kule maishna chatas yasham dahai zachal v'hai nekeba. The Mishnah teaches all offerings can become indistinguishably intermingled with each other, except for a sin offering and a guilt offering. The Gemara asks, what is different about a sin offering and a guilt offering that they cannot become intermingled? Is the reasoning that this, a guilt offering, is always a male, and that a sin offering is always a female? Chatas ve'oile nami ika sionasi hai seyal. The Gemara questions this explanation. A sin offering and a burnt offering are also like this, as a sin offering is always female, while a burnt offering is always male. The Gemara answers that although the standard sin offering is always female, there is the goat of the Nasi, which is a male sin offering, and therefore it can become intermingled with the male goat burnt offering. And as the statement of the Mishnah that a sin offering cannot become intermingled with a guilt offering despite the male sin offering of the Nasi, that is because this goat has straight hair and that guilt offering only from sheep or rams, which have wool, and the wool is curly. Pesach v'yasham nami lo mitzarev hai ben shana v'hai ben shtei hashanim ika sham nazi v'yasham etzoyrav ibais ema ika ben shana dimichazeh ben shtei shanim v'ika ben shtayim dimichazeh ben shana. The Gemara raises the difficulty. A paschal offering and a guilt offering also cannot become intermingled, as this paschal offering is in its first year, and that guilt offering is in its second year. The Gemara answers that there is the guilt offering of a Nazirite and the guilt offering of a leper, which must be in their first year. And if you wish, say instead that an animal is in its first year can become intermingled with an animal in its second year, as there is an animal in its first year that looks like an animal in its second year, and likewise there is an animal in its second year that looks like an animal in its first year. And that concludes the portion of the Talmud for that, and we start a new Mishnah right now. Asham shinas are b'shlamim Rabbi Shimon Oimer Shneim yishchatu b'v'tzafoin v'yichalu k'chamu b'shuvahem. In the case of a guilt offering that was intermingled with a peace offering, Rabbi Shimon says Both of them should be slaughtered in the north of the temple courtyard, as a guilt offering must be slaughtered in the north, while a peace offering may be slaughtered anywhere in the courtyard. And they both must be eaten in accordance with the halacha of the more stringent of them, meaning the guilt offering, with the following halachot. They may be eaten only in the courtyard rather than throughout Jerusalem, by male priests, and not by any ritually pure Jew. And on the day they were sacrificed in the following night, and not on the day they were sacrificed the following day and the intervening night. Amru lo ein miviin kadashim lebeis hapsul. The rabbi said to Rabbi Shimon, one may not limit the time of the consumption of an offering, as one may not bring sacrificial animals to the status of unfitness. According to Rabbi Shimon's opinion, the peace offering becomes leftover. Notar, the morning after it is sacrificed, and not at the end of the day, as the halacha concerning peace offerings. Rather, the rabbis hold the owner shall wait until these animals become blemished, redeem them, and bring an offering of each type that is worth the monetary value of the higher quality animal among them. Nis'alevu chatichois b'chatichois Kodshei kodashim kodshim kali Hanechol leyom echad v'nechol l'shnei yomim v'laylo Yecholu k'chol moshohen. The Mishnah adds, even according to the opinion of the rabbis, if pieces of the meat of one offering were intermingled with pieces of the meat of another offering, for example, meat from offerings of the most sacred order with the meat from offerings of lesser sanctity, or if pieces of meat from offerings eaten for one day and the following night were intermingled with pieces of meat from offerings eaten for 2 days and 1 night, since in that case the remedy with regard to offerings that were intermingled cannot be implemented, they both must be eaten in accordance with the halacha of the more stringent of them. That's the Mishnah, and now we go on to the Gemara. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Tani Tane kam mit Rav Shvis ein Leukem in der Me'atzchuma. In connection to the principle cited by the rabbis in the Mishnah that one may not bring consecrated animals to the status of unfitness, a Tana taught a Brighton to Sefta Shvi'it 629 before Rav. With regard to produce of the sabbatical year, one may not purchase produce of Truma from a previous year with its money, meaning money received in its sale, because one thereby reduces the time of eating the Truma. The produce of the sabbatical year may be eaten only until the time of the removal of that type of produce from the field, whereas Truma may be consumed at any time. Amu harabanon kamei rabin, or in practice as the Rabbah. Let's see how the English translates it. Steinsaltz. I think it's Steinsaltz. The sages said to the brides before Rabbah, they say Rabbah, not Rava. Okay. And they explained that this bride is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah. The reasoning was that if you would say that it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, doesn't he say, and as can be inferred from the Mishnah, that one may bring sacrificial animals to the status of unfitness? Similarly, one can limit the time allowed for the consumption of the sabbatical year produce. Amar lehu afilu temu Rabbi Shimon hanimili di'eved dechatchila lo. Rabbah said to them, you may even say that the Braita is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. That statement that one may bring sacrificial animals to the status of unfitness applies only in a case that is after the fact, as in the Mishnah, where offerings became intermingled. Rabbi Shimon did not permit one to bring sacrificial animals to the status of unfitness ab initio which means l'chatchila. The Gemara asked, and does Rabbi Shimon not permit one to bring sacrificial animals to the status of unfitness ab initio? Abaya raised an objection to Rabbah from a Mishnah. It's hard to know it's Rabbah Rava because they put brackets in one and they put parentheses in one. Parentheses is Rava and brackets is Rava. So this translation, I'm guessing it's the Steinsaltz. I thought it was Sansino, but it's actually, I think it's the Steinsaltz. Says that it's Rabbah. So usually Abaya and Rava argue. Rabbah and Rava. Here, Abaya raised an objection to Rabbah from the Mishnah. So maybe it is Rabbah, who knows? From the Mishnah that discusses the manner of eating meat of offerings in Zevachim 90b.